Hello learners, welcome to yet another lesson. Our topic has been foreign influence in Africa, and we looked at the Arabs and how they influenced the African continent, especially through slave trade. So we looked at the effects of slave trades, both positive and negatives, but of course mainly there were many negatives. We looked at how this slave trade was abolished. For instance, we looked at through the signing of treaties like the Morris-Bay Treaty, which stopped the export of slaves to any Christian country. Then we also looked at the Hamilton Treaty, which we said that one stopped the export of slaves to any country of the world. And then lastly, we looked at the Freire Treaty, which closed all slave markets in the world. This one closed all the slave markets. That's slave markets. These markets included Zanzibar, they included Tabora, which was the interior, and then it included Gore. Gore was in West Africa. So those way. Then another way we talked of through the construction of the railway lines, especially in East Africa. We said the railway line helped so much to stop slave trade in the way that goods were transported using trains instead of human beings. So that was then also identified and looked at the people who helped in abolishing slave trade. We talked of people like Dr. David Livingstone, who preached against slave trade. He solicited money that helped in stopping slave trade. He wrote books about slavery and its evils. We also talked of Sir Samuel Baker in especially in northern Uganda. We said he worked so hard to stop slave trade among the Acholi people. We also talked of people like Adam Smith in the southern part of Africa. So today we are going to look at, apart from the Arabs, we are also going to look at the Europeans in Africa. So today our emphasis is on Europeans. Now this was the second group to come, the second visitors to come to the continent of Africa. They were the second. Remember the first one were the Arabs from Asia. Now we are looking at Europeans from Europe. Now these Europeans came in 4 groups. So we are looking at the groups. The Europeans came in 4 groups. In fact, there were 5, so let's look at groups of Europeans. So in these groups, we are going, the first group that came, we had the explorers. So we have Europeans who came as explorers. Now after the explorers followed the missionaries. So the coming of the explorers led to the coming of the missionaries. Then we talked of the traders. Traders followed. Now after the traders, we had the colonialists. The colonialists, whom at times we call administrators. So we had the administrators. You can call them the colonialists or the administrators. Now the administrators of the colonialists led to the coming of the white settlers. So those are the 5 groups in which Europeans came to Africa. Explorers, we are going to look at examples like in Uganda, we talked of explorers like John Speke. Then missionaries, because when you talk of John Speke, then you talk of H.M. Stanley. And in P5, if you remember very well, H.M. Stanley's letter led to the coming of the missionaries. Now later we see traders. So when we talk of Ibeco Company, and then we talk of Sir William Mackinnon. Then later after the traders, for instance after Ibeco and failed, then we see the colonialists coming. You begin with Sir Gerald Poto, who recommended Uganda to become a British protectorate. Then, unfortunately or unfortunately in Uganda, we did not have the white settlers, but mainly Kenya was affected by the white settlers. They mainly occupied the Kenya highlands. So when you talk of, so there are few countries in Africa where the excess population that was in Europe, these white settlers, we are looking at the excess population that were given free land in Africa. So mainly Kenya was affected, countries like Zimbabwe were affected, countries like South Africa were affected. So our emphasis, so since we have these groups, we are going to look at each group, how it influenced our continent. So we are going to begin with the explorers. So let's look at explorers. Question is, who is an explorer? Who is an explorer? So when we talk of an explorer, we say an explorer is any person who travels to new places in order to find new information. So a person who travels to new places to find new information. About the area, about the place. So, you go to a new place which you have never gone, and your purpose is to find new information, or your purpose is to discover new areas in where you have gone, study the cultures of the people, study the traditions of the people, study the physical features of the people. So we say you travel to a new place and your purpose is to find new information. Now, we have got countries. Let's look at countries that sent explorers to Africa, European countries. So our number 2, let's look at European countries. That sent explorers to Africa. Which were some of these European countries that sent explorers to Africa? For instance, you can talk of countries like Britain. Shall I identify the examples of European, the explorers who came from Britain? You talk of countries like Germany. When you talk of people like a person like, for instance, in winter missionaries, a person like Ludwig Graf was a German. We talk of France also, sent explorers to Africa. Portugal, Belgium. Portugal, when you talk of people like Vasco da Gama, these are people who came from Portugal. You are talking of Belgium. You are talking of Belgium and some of the countries. Spain also sent some of the explorers to Africa. Spain also sent some of the explorers to Africa. Then you talk of Italy and so on. So these are some of the European countries that sent explorers to Africa. Now let's look at the reason. Why did it take long for these explorers to enter into the interior of Africa? Why did it take long for these explorers to enter the interior of Africa. So our number 3 here, let's look at why it took long for explorers to enter the interior of Africa. Why did it take? Because when you talk of the people like Vasco da Gama, he did not even enter the interior of Africa. He didn't even. So why? What were the reasons that made them hard to enter the interior of Africa? One of the reasons we can say Africa had thick, impenetrable forests that made their movements very difficult. That made their movements very difficult. So the thick impenetrable forest made the movements of these explorers very, very difficult. 2, we are looking at the hot deserts. So you can say Africa had very hot deserts that provided harsh climatic conditions that had provided hard, or you can say harsh climatic conditions. So when you talk of the Sahara Desert, it's considered to be the hottest desert in the world. It is found in Africa. We have other deserts like the Namib Desert, which is found in Namibia, that's in the southwest of Africa, provided hard or harsh climatic conditions. Then also, some parts of Africa had hostile tribes. Africa had hostile tribes, and these tribes did not allow foreigners to go through their country. When, for instance, they talk of Kenya, the Maasai of Kenya, the Nani of Kenya, we talked of them during the construction of the Uganda Railway, that they made life so difficult, they attacked the builders. The same way, they attacked some of the whites. For instance, when they talk of Peter West, who was murdered in Kenya. So we talk of one of the explorers who was called Peter West, murdered in Kenya by the Maasai. So many people feared, many of these explorers feared for their lives. Also, Africa had dangerous wild animals. Africa had dangerous wild animals. Dangerous wild animals, and there was those. These are animals that moved from point to point, so there were no established game parks at that time. So these explorers also feared the wild animals. Also, Africa had no clear routes or clear roads. Africa had no clear routes to follow. That these were the roads, because there were no roads. For instance, there were no tarmac roads, even the Maram roads. So people had to follow the path, just small ways through the bushes, and that put the lives of these explorers in danger, especially from wild animals, from hostile tribes. So it was not very, very safe for them to move. Then let's also look at reasons now why these explorers had to come to Africa. Having looked later, this were the problem that made them take long. But later, of course, they managed to come in. But then, what were they looking for? So let's also identify reasons. Reasons. So here we are looking at Europeans. So reasons, what were the reasons that made these people come into the interior of Africa? Later, they managed to come into the interior. So let's look at reasons why European explorers came to Africa. Reasons why European explorers came to Africa. Reasons why European explorers came to Africa. Why did they decide now to come to Africa? One of the reasons that led to their coming was that these people wanted to study the geography of Africa. So he said, European explorers wanted to study the geography of Africa. That's why at first Africa was known as a dark continent. It took long for them to find out that yes, to find the map or the geography of Africa because of the other reasons. Now in this case, they had to come into East Africa, study the physical features, give the names to the physical features, and at times they also discovered or studied the cultures and the resources in Africa. So the geography of Africa was one of the reasons that why they were sent, because we have got societies that sent these people. Like when we talk of the Royal Geographical Society, especially for the case of East Africa, when you talk of the African Association, especially for the case of West Africa. So they were sent to come and study the geography of Africa. When you talk of geography in terms of physical features, in terms of the map. They also wanted to find out about the customs and the traditions of Africa. So two, European explorers came to study the customs and traditions of Africa. We came to study the customs and the traditions of Africa. The foods, our cultures like circumcision, the dressing, the costumes. So all that these people were able to study. That's why now they removed the other name of a dark continent and then they looked at Africa as a country, as a continent with customs, a continent with traditions, a continent that had a centralized leadership in some areas. Let's also look at part 3. These people came or wanted to create market for their manufactured goods. 3, European explorers came to look for market for their manufactured goods. Now, one thing you should know that during the Industrial Revolution in Europe, Industrial Revolution was the change in the use of hands to machines in manufacturing, meaning that there were a lot of goods that had been manufactured, and these goods needed market. So many companies, many organizations sent the explorers to come to Africa to look for market, to find out if there was market they could sell their manufactured goods. But at the same time, these people also came to look for raw materials for their industries. So we can also say explorers also came, apart from looking for market, they also came to look for raw materials. So you can say European explorers came to look for raw materials for their industries. In Europe. So apart from market, we also wanted the raw materials. That's why many of them were sent to study the mineral resource, that is the resource wealth of Africa. And then lastly, they wanted to discover the physical features. So you can say European explorers came to study the physical features of Africa. When we talk of the famous River Nile, they came to find the source of River Nile. And then after finding the source of the River Nile, they were able to give the source Lake Victoria after the Queen of England. So many, like in West Africa, when you talk of River Niger, Mountain Elgon by Joseph Thomson, you talk of Rwenzori by H.M. Stanley. So this. So in summary, we are looking at Europeans, and we said Europeans came in 5 groups. We had the explorers that led to the coming of missionaries. Missionaries led to the coming of traders. Traders led to the coming of colonialists. And in some African countries, they were the white settlers. And then we have also given reasons why it took long for these people to come, to enter into the interior. Reasons like the thick impenetrable forest, reasons like the hot deserts, and then the hostile tribes. And then we have also given reasons why these people came to Africa, like looking for the raw materials, looking for market, studying the customs, the physical features, and the geography of Africa. Thank you for being a good audience. Bye for now.